All right. So Rinpoche said, Dashi Deleg, everyone on a live stream. I'm offering you this milk tea from the Buddha's begging bowl that contains the milk of loving kindness, the milk of bodhicitta. I'm offering that to all sentient beings in the three realms. Wamahong and Dashi Deleg. We're starting the CHENREZIG retreat all over the world. And so what is CHENREZIG? So first of all the Dharma is divided into three levels: the outer, inner, and secret. The outer pratimoksha, the inner bodhisattva vehicle, and the secret mantra, the Vajrayana vehicle. According to the scriptures, it is said that so on the outer level, there is the body, the outer, which is the pratimoksha, is just like the body of a person, like the head. Then the inner is the heart, the teachings of the Dharma. I like the heart, and then the secret are like the eyes. I'm seeing all phenomena. So the outer is the pratimoksha, the inner is the bodhisattva yana, and the secret is the vajrayana. And so similarly, as sadhana is also divided into these three aspects of outer, inner, and secret. From the outer perspective, the outer is also according to the sutra tradition. It says that the noble CHENREZIG with 1,000 eyes and 1,000 arms, as it is said in our prayer, his 1,000 eyes are 1,000 Chakravartin kings. 1,000 arms are 1,000 Chakravartin kings. So the Buddha appears, or CHENREZIG appears like a king, like a Chakravartin king to benefit beings. For example, he appears in this world of the humans to benefit beings here, but not only here, anywhere in the 6 realms of samsara. For example, there's also this king that appears in the animal realms, or there is this king that appears in the human realm. And so the king here is the king of bodhicitta, or altruism, the one who guides on the path of karma, cause and effect. Or we can say that all those with compassion that are male are CHENREZIG, and all female compassionate ones are Tara. So in brief, all the deities really are included within CHENREZIG and Tara. And externally, often we see this depiction of Yap and Yum in union. So we have male and female. We have Tara and CHENREZIG. We say that Tara is the female, the mother, and CHENREZIG is the father. But on the inner level, what that refers to is the mind only. So within the mind, we have this quality of clarity and emptiness. And in the Vajrayana, this is shown in the form, or depicted in the form of the male and the female in union. The clarity aspect is represented by the male, the Yap, and the emptiness aspect by the female, the Yum. And so to unite them, the skillful means are practices such as the channels, winds, and drops, where bliss is the Yap and emptiness is the Yum, the union of bliss and emptiness. First, we are introduced to bliss and emptiness, and then we are introduced to clarity and emptiness. And then finally, we realize that these qualities are inherent within us without meeting and parting. And this unchanging nature is the nature of the Buddha Vajradhara. And so also now in the sadhana, when we visualize the deity, the appearance of the deity with the implements and the color and so forth, the attire of the deity, all arises from this natural quality.
Lobdong Chiyung Yiba Jaga Sunga Tri, Perma Mamu Sunga Yore, Kare, Tiparaba Goji, Sangana, Tiparaba Goji, Yore. So that's all say that they're not Sataparaba Sunni say, Jerry, the Yeletri, Tiparaba Goji, Kanatri, Sakatari, Tipa Sun, this is called Little Dati, Lower Duchatawa, the sort of Nomidi, Havo Yore. 만큼 좀 리베티 봤었는데 제 탑재 가래에 조들이 호환 생리에서 말하는 당연히서 장코와는 참성을 제르들은 공정절에서 오다 레좀저 조르티는 레좀저 조르티는 타박을 토리 타박을 남다 망이 성명까지 가고제 동을 거요 남구조 리베티 봤었는데 대일 맞지서 완전 탑재 봤었는데 상하지 바가래들 동담을 생각대로 그러더니 코레가 찍으래시 그래서 뭐라는 순간인데 그게 봐 이제 찍람인데요 이서 이제 찍라들은 코레지 차요래지 그 쳐다오마다들이 쳐다오마다냐데 오마다를 까보기랑은 야당 통는 그런 거리 들이 시간은 땅들이 계속해서 리들 쪽과 차로 되는가 쳐다가는 제기요래 샘도 쳐가 배래 제라들이 상황 완전 탑재 와서 샘그 내lok되어서는 들이 쳐지 내lok되어서는 쳐지 땅장래시 대 샘간에 타봐지 뒤 내lok되어서는 들이 상황 완전 탑재 와서 샘그 내lok시서는 호와든 나대지요 말이지 당시 이제 결혼하면 되는데 대리는 상제 대 말했을지 고발은 잖아 세금 내록도 당마도 대리마도 집에 저리지는 건데 님네 왜 대고발을지 당시 난 금종리 밑에 봐서 무슨 금종지 누가도 금종 어떻게 나오네. 제일 금종하고 오 누가 그지 중에 다 다들이 상하고 좀 들이 대도 대사적으로 로통을 들이대는 데부터 봐서 무슨 들이대는 진짜 상심 차용거래 들이대는 상심을 되거든. 싸움하게 탑게 봐서 무슨 들이 실제 이제 나라를 좀 나와라 잡았나. 这做他这些细节的话，人们家了，这种破旧的吧，到底成个啥子？这老说我这当着了，这老人啥了嘞？当时不就觉得干起种也点上火的个嘞，然后他把那个老当这老人啥嘞？这现在这下个我们这里听不起了，他这个这玩意儿，他的你钱没把干起那个有嘞，光干这一切不嘞，俺两个人被骗有嘞，这他们抓着你结果嘞。
콜로 탕보디 카레레 켐볼라 콜로 탕보 콜로 솜도아 콜로 탕보디 카레 진짜 아 나나 파솜 소사 라 대단 말 왕 데보디 왕 아 탕보디 카레레
완전 탑스 빨리.
방법이래 왜? 예빠들. 군종이. 군종. 얘네들. 군종. 얘네 손바디 왕겨 탑기 대파. 왕겨 탑기 손바디 말아. 손바디래 봐. 방법이 가래. 네가 시서다 거의. 그냥 홀로 좀 송송아. 야 보고 말아. 이 방법 보여드리. 난 군종 그니탑 데보 그래. 상와 탑 왕탑 데보드니 잠부 보면서. 그냥 방법 송송송아. 이게 받으라. 방법이
동네
담보 진짜 그래.
아
진 담보 디바를 봤어서 담보도 양자 승자지 그래서.
뭐 담보지 같은 이제 들어서 까와장장진 난 거기는 최무태지가 뭐 까와지 그래 제 추념이 제고 되는 소타고도 참 이장 앞에 잡성성을 이렇게 까만 못 제고 그래 제 같은 이제 들어서 같은 이제 들어서 그래 난 금종리면서 뭐 대답이 세노통도 능게 또 금종리 애들이 능이 시발사 뭐 과사 송지 대토지 난 금종리 밑에 봐도 근데 정진은 나디는 야탈네 들이들이 다들이 사천나라고 다 하면들 금종리 밑에 와서 들이들이 나디는 탈없나 들이 싸움 완전 탑에 와서 싸움 코디가 생리 다 하고 그걸 그샘 코랑 싸움하지 저도 봐라 빼리 스카트로 이제 대봐서 저 갖고 놓아서 참여래 들이 쳐디 자 쳐디 또한테 맞아 쳐디 자와들 쳐디 가서 쳐디 잡고 좀 몰랐어 쳐디 장만 장래 돼 쳐디 장만 때문에 또 남금 좀 리버트 봤다 쳐디야 저처럼当做 치지 하고서는 저처럼 얘네 장만 하고는 그래서 금종 리버트 가서 들이 사람한테 타겟 봤으면 손들이 세부 초등학교 차종들이 사대에서 이제 바꿔요 말이 뭐 때로 죄송아.
So, thank you.
고소하게.
That's all.
요.
So, as in the study of the Buddha Dharma, in the teachings, often we come across different levels, different kind of vehicles of a practice. According to the secret mantra vehicle, a secret mantra speaks of 9 vehicles. And often elsewhere, according to the Pratimokshana Bodhisattvayana, it speaks about 3 main vehicles. So now from the perspective of the 9 vehicles, there is there's also a threefold the division of the way the 3 vehicles are laid out according to the Vajrayana tradition. Basically, is that first there is the vehicle, or kind of the yana of what is it? Of austerity, so which refers to the outer vehicle of the pratimoksha. And so here, the outer physical form of the 6 realms of samsara is principle, and one recognizes the suffering nature of samsara of the 6 realms. And then one spends one's entire life in practicing austerity and renunciation. And for example, there are the 253 vows of monastic and so forth. So one kind of puts oneself through various austerities. And then there's the second called the inner vehicle of the interdependent arising, or the origin, which is the origin of suffering. So then here one recognizes that all this suffering in samsara arises from the mind, the self-grasping, the dualistic thinking in the mind. So one here recognizes the origin of wandering in samsara. One mainly understands the workings of karma, a cause and effect. One recognizes what is the path of liberation and what leads to birth in the higher realms and what leads to birth in the 3 lower realms. So basically what one recognizes here is that it all comes back to the mind. The origin of all the suffering is within the mind. As the Buddha had said, first recognize suffering and then recognize the origin of suffering. And that is to recognize the cause of suffering to be self-grasping. And in relation to that, one recognizes the importance of bodhicitta. And then the third is the secret. And that is the path of skillful means, the powerful path of skillful means of the secret mantra. And so then here one recognizes that all the phenomena of samsara and nirvana are actually the mind. Ultimately, there is just one. Samsara and nirvana are one. This is also explained in the Samantabhadra prayer that we always recite. And it says there in the beginning, there is a single path, yet a single ground, yet 2 paths and 2 fruition. And it also says, if you recognize it, you are a Buddha. Not recognizing it, you are a sentient being wandering in samsara. So this single ground is just like pure water. And then water becomes tainted. For example, it becomes mixed with milk, or it goes down the drain, and it becomes not suitable for consumption. But it still is essentially water. True essence is water. So here in this vehicle, one does not conceptualize, is it pure or is it dirty water? But one looks at the essence of the water itself. And that is, water is pure. We say that in the Vajrayana, it is said that the mind is primordially pure. So when you recognize the true nature of the mind, there is no difference between samsara and nirvana. It all is one. So that is the meaning of this one ground according to the Samantabhadra prayer. It is just a question of recognizing or not recognizing it. But on the basis itself, on the ground, there is no distinction between samsara and nirvana. But then temporarily, samsaric sentient beings appear. And that is due to that second vehicle, the origin, the inner or the origin of suffering. So here we are introduced to the workings of karma, and we recognize that the origin of suffering is self-grasping, and that the way to purify this origin is by cultivating the mind of bodhicitta. And then once bodhicitta arises, we come to the third or the secret vehicle of the secret mantra or the path of skillful means. And here we are introduced to the ultimate nature. That is, all appearances are the deity, all sound is mantra, and all mental arisings are the natural play of dharmata or of primordial awareness. And that ultimate state of a primordial awareness is also referred to as Vajradhara because it is the unchanging state. So in any case, this is my take on these vehicles, but you continuously receive teachings here from Garchen Rinpoche, and so you can also ask him questions about that. He has been extremely kind of constantly giving you teachings and answering your questions, and also that has actually benefited myself very much. So I really encourage you to ask him questions.
대랑 생단 되어요. 대하고서 저도 배동되네. 당한 코알 마차네. 코알 잡방 코알 지방에 땅 코알 민족중 코알 야봉도 탈고 잡로 집어서 들이 코알 잡아면 들이 매도 빼만은지 들이 sempre 딱 맞춰요. 그래서 들이 다른 것들이 생각하면 아시들이 저기 밑에 땀이 고쳐 탐새들이 냠들이 그래서 오 따보면 제리들이 woman 아주는 니 이제 남과를 되지 생데 woman 자 주고래 얘나 woman 남이 생이 woman한테 생도 남과 잡다도 몇은 생도 남과도 잡대려 저따라 생대로 오 잡을 강진의 생을 살고도 다 잡대려 다 들이 대를 잡는 담게 뒤는 요래 당마 담게 추가 나과한테 잡대려 로고 자충우제들이 다랑 얘들이 뭔가 gem치 담체다 제봐 살살들이 살고 요래 도타만 되는 걸 그거들 다 무엇이들 다 개비시 뒤동동시 뭐지 대외들 잡는 고조 담체서는 잡는들이 사다다 라마야당 가로서 노로그 사제 주담기는 정말로 들이 라마야당 고조 들이 상생을 라마야당 가로서 나로그 들이 추고롱 조금 조금 초좀 거좀 잡았음 초좀 잡았음 거좀 그 당분 초좀이 사실은 들이 잡았음이 나중에 뭐가래 남양선은 라마야당 가로서 자들이 리담은 들이 레버가래 레버 거좀 제사지 그리고 사제 급토가 되다다 그것도 잡으면 돼 저리오래지 특정 되어야 와지 또 생대 좀 말고 생대 미지 이들이 그걸 롱걸 미롱고 죽을 미들이 되다가 차로들 너무 뜨게 야가는 메토는 일이 그 사제한테 메토는 일이 다 다른 것을 로아로 포르시나 사람들 요리도 동거지 너무 저사 그 자와 살랑의 요리도 고아리 너무 메토로 가서 다 맹인거래 배대다고 살면은 이제 하자고 와진 거리 마을을 떠나들이 탐지 뒤치를 못 빼는 거리 점에 먼저 밤에 쏘는 거 다들 내가 같은 노력다도 잡으러들이 또 고쳐서 미 정도들이 이제 고쳐서 잠지도 마셔 그 남자왔으면 저 들이 제법 것은 더우지 뒤송되게 담로 되는 상요래 새 장로도 나는 장로 니레스 그리고 장로 디들이 다다다 무슨 라레라라 삼사로 좀 다상하게 잡았다 다다송 거래 니도 자는 차다 상고래 그때서도 상모당 노자들 내지도 누구들이 조금 말해 돈다들 상모야 본테 돌런지나 트리들이 해도 그래 노자들 하장 같이 뭐래 특히 좀 뭐래
Is this I think this is a different text now, right? Oh, yeah. No, okay. So this sadhana that we practice as a CHENREZIG sadhana, and it begins in the small print here. There's a short verse of the beginning of the refuge, and within that, this small print here, actually the entire meaning of the refuge is contained. So it begins with the visualization. Visualize that on your crown is a lotus, a sun disk, and a moon disk, upon which are the assemblies of the deities of the three roots and the jewels. So each word is very meaningful. So first, you visualize at your crown as a lotus. The lotus represents a detachment from samsara. So right now it is our body is within samsara, but the mind is actually inseparable from space at all times. The space-like nature of the mind is the Dharmakaya that always abides like space. And also the lotus flower is related to the central channel. The stalk of the lotus flower above the crown points to the entrance of the central channel. And also this is a sign that our mind, even though we are in this physical form, our mind is actually connected to space, the outer space at all times. So that is the connection between our crown and the lotus flower through the lotus flower stalk. So the lotus flower is a sign of not being attached to samsara. So it means to recognize, first of all, that I want to become liberated from samsara. Samsara is only suffering. So it begins really with a mind of renunciation. And so the lotus flower represents this. And so then when we recognize the nature of the mind, then we recognize that we are actually always inseparable from space. For example, when you close your eyes, in an instant, you will gain this experience of how there is no delineation between yourself and space. The mind pervades all of space. For example, if you close your eyes and you think of a certain place in the world, the mind goes there instantly. And that is also a sign of its pervasiveness. So the Dharmakaya is pervasive like space. The Sambhogakaya appears in the sky like a rainbow in the sky. According to the secret mantra, the Vajrayana, when one recognizes the space-like nature of the mind, then all aggregates, elements, and sense sources will manifest as the deity. And then the Nirmanakaya appears directly as a spiritual master, for instance, for the sake of sentient beings. So he mentions then here the deities of the three roots and all the three jewels, the sources of refuge. So according to the Pratimoksha path, we first go for refuge in the three jewels, the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Or according to the Sutra path, we take refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and in the Sangha. And then when we then actually engage in a path of practice, then our sources of refuge become the three roots, the Lama, Yidam, and Dakini. Or we can also say, we often speak about the 9 jewels, the 3 jewels, the 3 roots, and the 3 kayas, which make the 9 jewels. And so dividing it in this way, we first, in the Pratimoksha path, take refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. In the Bodhisattva path, or the inner path, we take refuge in Lama, Yidam, and Dakini. And in the ultimate, or the secret mantra, we actualize the 3 kayas, the Dharma kaya, Sambhoga kaya, and the Nirmana kaya. So also there is a refuge prayer in our Ngundro text, the preliminary text, that actually is a refuge where we go for refuge in the 9 jewels. So in this way, also, we should actually combine the different practices with each other, or basically see the connection between the different practices. So we go through the outer, inner, and secret as our mind increasingly matures. So the mind matures from Nirmana Kaya to Sambhoga Kaya to the Dharma Kaya. So it is just like the growing of a flower. First, you have the seed of the flower planted into the ground, and then it grows into a stalk, it grows into a seedling, and then into an actual flower. So then we can also view the root part, the part of the flower that is planted into the ground, as samsara. When we are attached to samsara, then we are still mingled with the ground. But then gradually the flower grows out of the ground, and it becomes a sprout, and it turns into a flower with blossoms and leaves. So you can actually gain a really deep understanding from this example. So it's important that we know how to condense all into one. And to combine, or to kind of see the relation between the different levels of practice, which is why in the refuge of the Ngundro section, there's a refuge that takes refuge in all these 9 jewels. First, according to the sutra path, or the Pratimoksha path, where we take refuge in the 3 jewels. Then we enter the actual path of practice, where we take refuge in the 3 roots. And then as a result of practice, we actualize the 3 kayas. So we take refuge in the 3 kayas on the ultimate level. So therefore, that's what it mentions here. I can take refuge in the 3 roots and all the jewels, the sources of refuge. And so then it begins with, I take refuge in the gurus, jewels, Yidam deities, and the assemblies of ocean of victorious Buddhas. So also elsewhere he said, I take refuge in the deity, which is my own mind. So we should recognize that everything, all these jewels, these places of refuge, are ultimately included within our own mind. So it's very important just to think about the meaning of this small print here, because it is very profound. It also recommends to discuss the meaning of just these words with one another. Discussion is also very important. Even though you do receive instructions, it's also important to integrate them into your mind by discussing them with one another.
Gosun could be chapter chess. Gosun could be chapter chess. Gosun couldn't carry. Luigi Goni, oh, simple, oh, simple, gonna carry the taxam. Water to the main, the Shina, what did the reading on do me? Tehako. 능력이 용도면 무엇은 그지 또 생구는 그 람지 누가 걸면 기와 참조하라고 그래. 저기 하고 그래. 무엇은 그게 생구가 가리 딱 금종방아서 금종방아서 사지 좀 내려 까토마데 그래. 능이 시발사 금종방아서 능이 당시 용খন 가리리 또 당지리. 따라서 능이 말이 나대 놓으면 난지니 만종이 여기 쭉 하고서 오 땅에 난디데 빵고 산다 금종 빵지 들이 다들이 금종 빵을 가르치고 나디 빵거든 나디 빨라 가리 나디 가서 나디 생분한 독사 나디 생 나디 제가 나오는 인도 나디니도 야 대리 생고랑 눈에 딱 쬐던 오 남카로 작조로 그래 생고랑 인도가 먼저 되는 생은 내륙도로 들어가고는 매서 생고랑 내륙도서 진짜로 말이 로그로 빠지는 거 밑다와리 대하고 라고요리 제발 오비 따와 오 진짜 맞으면 생은 속에서 때려서 깨면 찔랍다 줄여주세요 사자 제목에 나지레스 고부터 보면서 충분히 줄이 치우는 참 직장 싸면 맞던 장 샘들 남도 직장 매번 샘들 가리는데 다 아시 남도 직장 매번 샘들구나 오 우리 남카라서 레스 참 맛을 남도 줄 뒤들어 다 좋은 사지서 때레스 대적으로 상지 좀 내게 쉽지 남도 상지 또 서버 상지 레스 샘이 오래지 뒤쪽에 용만지 저도 자도 뒤하고서 따끔 용하고서 따끔 용방와서 나디 방거도 없어 대하고서 다 나디 방거다 나를 하러 상사로서 오 수거래서 나이 이미 봐대 샘정마 당장들랑 나를 살지 오 담을 방 대하고서 요리 특정만 샘자고 뒤대로 대대가 내대가 남도 가래 지용나 대답시 람지 쳐달라면 매일 남도 어찌와도 매일 막 터는 남도 어찌 자원들이 양당는지 야 멋지게 되는 가오를 어따디 따치봉에서 뒤서리다 뭐가 차고를 뒤야고만 독서 차고를 차당이랑 영어를 차과야 맞지 내가 능마야 맞지 차당이야 맞지 방청을 쳐달라면 파격소 대를 샘싸마에 대두고 요랬지 야 니는 떼도 와차를 저를 오마야 버리 오마이 자양내는 소리나 자든 저번도 저 차도라 야 쳐다만 대고 라를 잘 사도 쳐다만 가래 라를 잘 상살로스 오 대도 다른 이렇게 또 하공노래 고성구나 세그 나니 빵을 딱 검정 빵나 검정 나니 나니 빵스는 직접 집에 생들이 뒤살게 버렸지. 대을 따라를 때 도성시 시합 내부면서 소소랑을 이시 주여봐대 책제가 다 지어라. 소소랑의 셈도 하고 성전은 혼대 이가 랑의 셈이랑 오래서 라니 소주면서 와 지었다가 있더라. 저다 나와 답지랑의 셈지. 미소라랑의 셈이 사지야랑의 셈이 답지랑의 셈. 대학들이 나가도 왔다 딸이 하고 그 나를 가서 창살로 송 그리 막 장도 단들이고 저거랬지.
And then it says, all beings with your parents, the foremost, recite the following with respectful body, speech, and mind. So respectful body, speech, and mind. So for body, speech, and mind to be respectful, mainly the mind has to be respectful. So first, the mind must recognize that the 6 realms of samsara are suffering by nature. And then you recognize that I do not wish to experience such suffering. So this is the first respect that the mind really pays by recognizing suffering, which is actually the first instruction that the Buddha gave. And when you recognize this, then just naturally you will stop engaging in negative actions with body and with speech. You will recognize the origin, the cause of all this suffering. The Buddha's first teaching were recognize suffering and abandon the origin of suffering. What is the origin of all suffering? It is self-grasping. In the 37 Bodhisattva practices, therefore, it says, all suffering without exception comes from wishing for one's own happiness. So there is not a single form of suffering that does not arise from self-grasping. It all arises from self-grasping. So when you understand that, then you will recognize I really have to give up self-grasping. This is the origin of all my suffering. So where do I find self-grasping? It is within my own mind. Because I believe that there is a self, I also perceive the existence of others. So look at that mind. The essence of that mind is actually like space or like a vast ocean. There is no duality of self and other within the mind. When you recognize the mind really as it is, there is no delineation between self and other. Therefore, it is also said that when you realize the nature of your mind, there is no higher learning than that. There's no higher learning than realizing the nature of your mind. So, according to the scriptures, this is referred to as the view of Madhyamaka, the middle way view, where there is no grasping. So the middle way view instructs us to not grasp at anything, neither existence nor non-existence. We shouldn't think about anything at all. And who actually taught that too? It was Tilopa, when he taught Mahamudra. He said that without a single thought, decisively look at your true nature. This is Mahamudra. So Mahamudra is this famous term, this lofty term, but actually it is all that it really is to look at your true mind without a single thought. And we always think that I can't understand Mahamudra, it's so profound, I can't understand it. But actually, if you just trust in what you see when there's no thought in your mind, then that is Mahamudra. So don't think about anything at all. Without a single thought, look at your mind. And you will recognize your space-like nature. So that is the meaning of this verse. Without a single thought, decisively look at your true nature. When you decide decisively, when you decide that this is my true nature, then this decisiveness is Mahamudra itself. The Buddha himself said, all beings are actually Buddhas. You are all Buddhas because your mind is Buddha. It is just like pure water. So don't think about, is it pure water or dirty water? Just look at the essence of water itself. And so to recognize it, recognize the origin of all suffering, and that is the self-grasping within the mind. So in the Vajrayana, when we take refuge, we say, I take refuge in the deity, which is my own self-knowing awareness. It is the awareness that sees that there is no self and no other. That is self-knowing awareness. So without a single thought is to look at the mind without conceptualizing its existence or non-existence. And then when you look at this mind, when a thought arises, let it be, just let it be natural, and it will subside just like a wave subsides back into the ocean. So thoughts will not just disappear, thoughts will arise, but we should not grasp at these thoughts. But instead we cling to these thoughts, and this repeated, constant clinging at our thoughts causes the mind to solidify further into an ice block. For example, we like a certain person. We think this person is so great. But because we really like a certain person, then there is bound to be someone that we dislike. And we think that this person is so bad. So one requires the other, really. The attachment and aversion come hand in hand. So without a single thought also means let go of these dualistic concepts of attachment and aversion. Let them be just like waves in water, and pay no attention to them. Then you can rest in the pure nature of your mind. So in this way, without grasping over and over again, you stay in the pure water-like nature of the mind. If you begin to grasp, if you begin to think, it is just like pouring milk into the water. It will cloud the color of the water, so water will not stay clear. So in this way, understand the meaning of this ultimate refuge. I take refuge in the deity that is my own self-knowing awareness. Then you will understand the deity to be your own mind. So again, when we pay respect with the three doors, then here we should mainly understand that it means paying respect with the mind, which means abandoning self-grasping, which is the origin of all suffering. And it means to recognize that if I do not grasp at anything in my mind, that is Mahamudra. In the Heart Sutra, in the beginning, the perfection of wisdom, it says, the perfection of wisdom is the sphere of self-knowing primordial awareness or primordial wisdom. So it is to recognize that the perfection of wisdom is my own mind. And it is actualized when you recognize that samsara and nirvana are the natural projections of your own mind. The 37 practices say appearances are one's own mind. Everything is your own mind. The three lower realms are your own mind. The Buddha is your own mind. Everything is your own mind. And your own mind is like empty space. So I take refuge in the deity, which is my own self-knowing awareness. That is the refuge of the Vajrayana, and this is really where a refuge begins.
가리하고 시합을 딱 그래도 너무보다 삼지가 하고 갖고 그러다 그래서 뭐라 그 삼지가 소리스 늘는 용 소리스 차차는 강사적들 니 매야보다 그 삼지가 소 니 야보면서 중중中你中嘛到底中庸中中是到了那个时候拿起来肉都地下过这个什么这个都是下过呢这些什么能到出来个人嘛让你要做个人嘛错了什么的能上下过了的你们呢就能上十多点呢的到哪里去了长长路的了这里让人的了大抽什么招什么搞什么抽什么招什么就搞什么人都有的生活动嘛的出个人让你下来一些的大部什么中医有的大部他当着了但我不能起码去搞的你们你他第一就不去结果的大部他当着了切不到看见工这家用嘛来就这用嘛是他切不到说什么马里大切一大部他当着了的你我懂吧哪怕懂吧到切不到了说让你下来一些的啥东西就肉的了别的这个的啥用看用嘛啥他这也人家的有的人家就个现在就我的现在搞的就我查什么的呢딱 체질도 타고 세부랑 하지들 세부랑 하지들 저거 내가 좀 동네 매번 내가 좀 세부랑 하지들 这个车机啊用了，怕西啊用了，这用的用了，这里在去头的用不出个多点强的，变了到些康门多了，些康门的送药的哦，就这么叫成一种了，那拉满嘛，这些康门的送药的，我就是给经济个送的，出去到外拉嘛就把多个多啊些，原来些康嘛怕用个多啊些。拉玛就把了些看嘛马到呢，拉玛就把讲过呢，阿罗长梦啥的人是，上来去看哪个人是，拉玛就把些看嘛当真的，这里阿罗操作这抓药的是得送这一个得送的，别的都弄怕了七八节目药的东西呢哦，那个身体用的下过了真的，对，当然那他都上到了哦。大刚才送的这里上街他们这就不过的，拉玛个人么的。拉们送了去，拉们偷了去，这样送是偷了去，拉们偷的人是拉们去上街是这个时候下过来，拉们出个国外去送啊，这里大官儿那个这些的杂七包也吧，让身边的上街也吧，这个谁上街个偷的啊去不了，第呢，让谁个当地的交通的学呢，哦，大家就把查出来，大拉们出个人，我拉出个人是。我觉得怎么着，我觉得啥个里头嘛，这为啥人就那没吧？做生的这哈国做的呢，这让人看了上车了的。哦，让人把啥他们这里就这么叫啊，就跑了，就这么就上街头就经常唱个在哈国的也送这头了，这里让人看了上车了的。我讲到他们现在的人不，他们现在多句，弄哈刚送了这里，经常嘛这里有嘛的。讲哈，你吃这个的，就他的啥情不有的，底下讲的让人来上车老死。
阿罗什么卡嘞？阿罗差不？So this prostration to the deity, that is your own self-knowing awareness, is very important, and we really encounter it in essence anywhere. For example, in the 37 practices, in verse number 36, it says, "In brief, at all times, look at the state of your mind." So be mindful in whatever you do. And a sign of such mindfulness, or a sign of wisdom, especially for a beginning practitioner, is to recognize the difference, first of all, between afflictive emotions and actual love. So in the beginning, we need to discern that this is love, and this is actually an afflictive emotion. For example, when we look at another person, and we say that this person is great, so we call that love. But then often, at the same time, that leads to seeing someone else in a negative light. So we look at somebody else's faults. But in the Dharma, it is said that we should not look at the faults of others, because looking at the faults of others is what will only obscure one's own mind. So with mindfulness, recognize whatever thought or feeling arises within your mind, positive and negative feelings. Instantly recognize it. And in this way, through recognizing what arises in your mind, the fixation to that will be cleared away, just like when you're like pouring some eye drops into your eyes, and immediately clear away any kind of obstruction. So taking refuge in the deity, which is your own self-knowing awareness, is to recognize that the three jewels, the three roots, ultimately are subsumed within the three kayas. The Dharma kaya is the empty essence of the mind. And the Sambhoga kaya is the natural clarity, the naturally clear awareness of the mind. And so there are two kinds of mistaken view. Either one holds an eternalistic view or a nihilistic view. And these are both mistaken. For example, an eternalistic view is to think that things are real. That is how things really are. And therefore, I must do this or that. Because this is how it really is. So that's one mistaken view. And the other one is nihilism, where one denies the existence of anything. One says none of that is true. Nothing is true. Karma does not exist and so on. So that's a nihilistic view. And both of them obscure the nature of the mind. And the true nature of the mind dispels those two faults. The fault of eternalism is dispelled through the empty essence of the mind, and the fault of nihilism is dispelled through the natural clarity of the mind. So in the old tantric system, in the Nyingma system, that is why the deities are depicted in union as Yab Yum, to represent this union of emptiness and clarity. And also, when we see the union of male and female, then that implies a very blissful state. And so how have they come to this blissful state? It is naturally through recognizing their true nature, through coming to the true nature of the mind that naturally dispels the faults of eternalism and nihilism. And so this mind is in essence Vajradhara, as it is an unchanging state. So then also this line of not taking refuge in the deity, which is self-knowing awareness, is also related to some of the verses we encounter in the Serkangma prayer, the Golden Temple prayer, where there is an homage that begins with an homage to one's own mind, that is wherein all the Buddhas of the three times dwell. In the past, there was actually one teacher who said, you are always reciting the Lama Chöpa prayer, but then you just forget about the Serkangma prayer, meaning that actually it's supposed to be part of the Lama Chöpa practice, the Serkangma prayer. So anyways, he said that if you don't include it, if you don't understand its meaning, then it is just like eating cold potatoes. But if you recite it, understanding its meaning, then it's like eating hot potatoes. So if you understand the meaning of this, basically you understand the quality within your own mind. So that's the meaning of I take refuge in the deity, which is my own self-knowing awareness. And also within your mind, the guru, the lama, as in the Lama Chöpa, is included. So within the guru represents all enlightened form, the speech, all enlightened speech in the mind, the Buddha's mind. And then that guru is included within your own mind. Thigten Somgön had said, I have understood that my own mind, the Guru's mind, and the Buddha's mind are actually one. So if you sustain a state of mindfulness, you recognize how the Guru, how the three kayas are all part of your own mind. So therefore we say one's own mind primordially is the Buddha. And then the deities, the Buddhas, manifest out of great love for sentient beings. And so when great love arises, this is what melts the self-grasping within one's own mind. So this is how we should approach deity practice. Whatever deity you practice CHENREZIG or Samantabhadra, you should have the awareness, the confidence of actually being the deity. I really am that deity. I embody the love of this deity because it is my true nature. So this verse, I take refuge in the deity, my own self-knowing awareness, is also connected to this verse in the Serkangma prayer, where we pay homage to the Buddhas, which are actually included within our own mind, which actually are dwell within our own mind, in the palace of our own minds. So that is really the essence of all refuge, and for this reason, these words are extremely important.
Magaranta Chopambers, the Magaranta Sem not to be since I won't tongue work on it. Not to run you were your either or Chapata, Mount or Damati, Chodi, they must have the taste on it in it. Magaranta, the longest similar, new barons and China were shadow was it, they must have to take half or that's what Chado. Given a lot of the sonore or the production money for the Chubani on Rasi Lama to make the song that production but of Chubamber. You did a terror or the child, a lot of the songs. Did they took the Hako, my love the Hagore, Yimatini, Mangara, and that Chubamber. Namdo the Tema, the Torati or Hakore. Regular Nang Mai Day, Yana, Torch of Yore. Tell the Docha, do not sell my bond to Chashi Bassamana. Trinity said the Marina, time the young can never your money, or charge of your money, the Magara, Chubamber, Museum Toma Florida. Tell him the batch on the we need Mare, take some Lord, Taxetana. Three Taki Ibatan, three Pachayang down the Yoga, Taki Darcy, Pachati Dang, Matorati, Tita the Seminary Biomari. They take some, they take the song, people, Masoran Bojo, song, or Council or Roga Boma, Tavi, they had them kitchen or somebody. Sartam Medib is to come to Seminary towards, Rectal Montoran to come to Seminary towards. Matoda then you meet Magabi, the Satyam Medimbe, Zokam similar towards Rectam Motor and Tokam similar towards Matotam, then you meet Magabi, the Zomij similar toward Council or Rogomason. That be the return that you Retarded young things, Tata Cotta Mimambo, or Ketchup or Tritata, they can't take some they did to lean chocolate. The technomas of your Mary. There is the Magara, Chuba, you know about Architect and Chuba on the world. This is come and send to shit in all Chuba. She done a Chuba in Mon Chuba, Chuba, Zudater or Janet, and he shall come and some glory. Oh, hot down to that chamberdos. Don't you body one of my shorty, she mamma didn't know your money. To talk to my son, this is a salad, you know, Trinity, Magara, Chubamber, make a tongue and follow Shad, tie you me there, Shabbat and Shimba, Tachi, Pachayo, make a tongue and follow Shasum, the Shabbat or Castin, the Bachu, some. Solamente tra le Marina striscia pacciado ore mette ton tolo siad tu som nyamni gire de sem na to go ma sono sente de ba ya sente todo cosa zambote ya ma para tere de zambre de do man boy go sagang tabe tara de todo ore sem nam kar che me ba nam kar che me ba ji de sem che me ba de ge to ma le 세고 내려가고서는 들이 영능 강양 매대 더블레트 색송마들 sem고 나가는데 대리 죽어 남파인데 송시해요래 다 하점 그이지 뭐 잡았다마 그 세피 망보 쉬나요 주디 롱망보 장은 세고 내려가면 들이 시다 팽거마리 쇼포 말이 맞더디 다다 다 팽거리 되는 동네 좀 보여래 다른 Tritida hakoso, Tritong maybe they are Tambadi, the same when they look racy. They'll continue on young look dona, Pechalo Musum, Malari Betel or Sonore, Tate, Jambo, discipline, Tabe, Changayore, Kachambore.
So I pay homage to the deity, which is my self-awareness, and then I make offerings of unceasing self-clarity. So when you see the nature of mind that is without any thoughts, then offerings of unceasing self-clarity are made. So when you see the thought-free mind, you do not need to intentionally, deliberately abandon thoughts. Thoughts arise, but you do not grasp at thoughts. You recognize them the moment they arise. So normally when we encounter a pleasant object, we develop attachment and aversion against something that we think is unpleasant. So instantly when we encounter something, a feeling arises in the mind. And so whenever these feelings arise, these emotions arise, recognize them with mindfulness. Milarepa's Guru Yoga practice, it says, when the six sense consciousnesses are without attachment to the six sense objects, then offerings naturally occur. So when the mind is free of dualistic grasping at self and other, and the mind is in a state of mindfulness, and then there is no attachment to whatever a sense object arises. And that is the natural offering. And then next it says, I openly confess transgressions of the four extremes. And so when an emotion or a feeling arises, recognize that feeling, and without being distracted for an instant, look at the essence of this concept, and it will naturally subside. In the Samantabhadra prayer, it says, when desire arises, neither reject nor accept it, but instead allow the mind to hold its own, to rest naturally. Then the mind will remain unobscured. And when the mind remains unobscured, then the presence of the five sense objects will have no negative effect on one, will not cause any harm. One will not place habitual tendency and imprint into one's mind. So I openly confess transgressions of the four extremes. So these four extremes basically means to analyze things in terms of or label things in terms of existence or non-existence. And as long as we label things this way, we are placing imprints into our mind continuously, dualistic imprints. So don't analyze anything, and the mind remains in an unobscured state. This also was explained in the 3 words that strike the vital point. Khenpo Munsel Rinpoche gave a commentary on that. These words are also very important when it comes to understanding the view. And so there are these instructions by Khenpo Munsel on the 3 words, the 3 statements that strike the vital point, where he mentions how the 3 realms are being purified. So in essence, he says that although the mind is clear, if you don't grasp at the clarity, then that liberates the realm of form, the form realms. And if you see, but you don't cling to that, then that liberates the desire realm. And although the mind is empty, but when there is no clinging to that, to non-conceptuality, then that purifies purifies the realm of no form, then the the formless realm. So this is how he explains the liberation of the three realms. And so the essence really that is explained here, the important point is the clarity of awareness. We need to recognize the clarity, the power of our intrinsic awareness. And so that is also related to this verse here of the previous one, make offerings of unceasing self-clarity. So the unceasing self-clarity. Whatever thoughts arise, if you sustain a state of self-clarity, then naturally everything becomes an offering. For example, then hatred or anger, when liberated, becomes an offering. So this verse here is again connected to that verse we mentioned before in the Golden Temple, the Serkangma, and the homage of the Serkangma, which is also very meaningful. But so in brief, the point is that the presence of the sense objects themselves do not cause any harm if there is no clinging attachment to them, and if you sustain a state of mindfulness, then all appearances become the deity. And so then in terms of those four extremes here in the confession, without thinking in terms of existence or non-existence, without any fixation in the mind, without any analysis, no further imprints will be placed within the mind. And confession naturally occurs, meaning that fixations naturally become purified within that state. So that is the meaning of confession. And so that is the mind, that the clear mind that does not grasp, that is the mind that has always been there, the unceasing mind. It has been there in the past, and it is the present mind there now. And it will be there in the future, in all future times. That is the primordial Buddha Samanta Bhadra. And even if this world were to be destroyed, the mind itself will continue to remain. It will never be destroyed, because the space-like nature of the mind transcends birth and death. So Milarepa also spoke about that you have to gain confidence in the immortal nature of the mind. When you realize it, there is no more fear, even if the entire world were to come to an end. You've recognized your mind cannot die. So that space-like nature of the mind is said to be the Dharmakaya. So this is an extremely important point. Even if you receive many pointing out instructions, that is really the essence. You need to understand the essence of the mind. And now, even if you receive many instructions or engage in much studying, much learning of the scriptures, the benefit is not as great as realizing the nature of the mind. And of course, I don't dare to say that there is no benefit. There certainly still is a benefit from studying the scriptures. But then if we don't recognize our true nature, then there still will be suffering. And so we need to transcend the conceptual sphere and recognize, find bliss that is free of all suffering. So Longchen Rabcham therefore had said that when you realize the nature of your mind, there is no need for learning any other scriptures. And this also relates to what Milarepa had said. So ultimately, within this refuge, actually, also the mind generation is included, and therefore it is very important.
Khoa tong ne to par ko kada sang sar jin ban yo kun na le to ban ngo so khoa tong ne to so khoa lu za li me ba cha gun do si za li de sa ji de de la sim ji tam ji sim de sa ji me ni khoa yo ma ji ni ta dan do ka le ta cha rong da ga cha de yo le de zhong ni sa ji 심지 맞아서 대 맞아서 동 같이 신이 같이 오는 대답적이 똑들이 니게 되는데 너는 산초생부터 나디데 산초들이 니마 당겨리 그 작업도 좀 심지니 요 말이지 콜라 요 말이지 문독사는 그래서 소소를 때나 하고 그리 오 샘장만 좀 샘콜라 이제니 사지 뭐 하고 좀 터나 또 세대 나디들라는 니매가 차로도 없어 나중에 이미 없어. 니랑 대려들이 자다도 고성도 없어. 하고들이 새로 니왜 저리 하고나. 들이 돈담 줬다. 니들이 그 총성으로 이제 놓는 거잖아. 돈담을 내 맞아서 하고서는 그때 말에 니도 상황 좀 맞다래. 가리스는 저거를 맞도돼. 저거 말에 싸워는 요말고 가리는 좀 맞다고 해서 돈담 내 말에 대해서 생리가 아니나. 그 가야는 그 좀하다 그래. 당장 된지 해온 거래. 대더라더니 코와 동네 똑바로 까다 상탈지 말죠. 딱을 샘싸면서 좋지. 까리 샘싸만 말이. 대서랑이야 참대요 봐. 상탈되는 가상은 참대요. 가가요 말. 나오냐 말이가 따서 영향을 더래. 깨자시는 내가 쳐들어라. 이 참이고 더래 때문에 니는 너 가리면 너 가리 다 지라고 해. 그래서 나들이 자 되다 코라는 건데 이거 가가 저기에 그 가다 상탈지 말죠. 좀만 매배 니니 매배 샘때 가디는 뛰는 대제나 드린 코란 좀 흥요 말이지. 가다 상탈지 말죠. 끌자라래 똑바로 모두 게다 탐치 생긴 탐치 나디들처럼 뭐는 끌자라래 똑바로 나도 세번대로랑 통화시 쇼상 대세면들 제 통화를 해버렸어요. 랑그 내로 또라 들이나 뒤서 또 그거 배제다를 들이대 산쪽에서도 뭐 때랑 뒤서들이 때가 사워 감점 seb지도 저랑지 가요 송을 산쪽에서 비용나 예빈 고속으로 돼서 오늘 도당 산쪽에 내가 통과하다 막 뭐요 대답제 또 동네 거 차요 말이지 그냥 그섬요 저 도발죠 예린 코와도 그섬 차대요래 죽은 남과다와 생비전 남과다와 될라 롱거들 다남반다도 들이 타고 싶지 않고 다시 한 진고받을 제바 참지 차요래 그거들도 내가 미움을 적들이 차론도 잡지자이 차론도 차대요래 정말 최단 벽고섬 랑지에 다 하고서 하고 서게 하고서는 들이 랑지들이 상하가 땅을 나와 라 잡방나 제도 이시죠 봐이나 라당 나냐랑 네가 실질이 요 말이지 다 팔라면 세비 작업님 노도 맞아서 실질이 작업도 하고 두고 이렇게 구성도 더 봐줘 좀 실제로서 로는 약관 나는 야래 들이라 막이시 이만 보여래 들이쳤다 상하 동탐된 뒤는 요래 초가 찍로는 뒤는 싸우는 거야. 못한 뒤 돈다도 싸우는 거야. 로저리 책당정대 말이 싸우는 저기 이제 보여래. 들이 주도는 거. 들이 되거든 참조가
And then it says next, so I rejoice equally in the virtues of the three times. I beseech the Buddhas to empty samsara from its depths. So samsara must be uprooted from its depths. And how do we uproot samsara? The Buddha himself said, you are a Buddha, your mind is Buddha. There actually is no real samsara. So we uproot samsara from its depth by realizing that no real samsara actually exists. And what seems to exist, what seems to appear, is a temporary ice-like state. So ice does not actually exist inherently as a rock, but it actually is water by nature. So sentient beings do not actually exist. And we realize that through the power of compassion. or the sun of bodhicitta melts the ice block of self-grasping. And when the ice block of self-grasping melts, we realize that no real sentient being actually exists. So therefore, no real samsara actually exists. And so that is what the Buddha had realized. That is our own true nature. When you understand this, you understand how your own mind itself primordially is the Buddha. So the primordial mind is the mind that is devoid of self-grasping, the mind that has no dualistic thought of self and other. So when you realize that there actually is no self and no other, then there is no basis for attachment or aversion to arise. This is also mentioned elsewhere, that ultimately when you realize the nature of the mind, what you realize is that everything is illusory by nature. And if everything is illusory by nature, then anything is okay. But then, of course, like some people say that, like maybe you're too loose and you think that that's okay, everything is okay, nothing really matters. It's also not like that. But everything, anything may arise, and there is no more division of that is okay and that is not okay. I'm not fine with that. I approve of this or don't approve of that. So there is no more preference like that. Anything is okay in that sense. That is when you have gained an uncertainty in the ultimate truth of your mind. Then you see things as illusory by nature, and therefore you don't no longer cling to the true existence of appearances. So the mind just abides like pure water at all times. And that is also the meaning of this next line, to remain in the naked and unobstructed primordial purity. So this term unobstructed, or is your unimpeded, open nature of mind. Unobstructed in the sense that there is no outer and no inner. There's complete openness. When you recognize your true nature, you recognize this complete openness. The reason why we have not recognized complete openness is because of the concept of there being an I, a self that exists. This concept of an existing self constantly solidifies things and causes these boundaries between ourselves and others. So when you recognize your true nature, when there is no more self-grasping, when through an altruistic mind, self-grasping has become purified, you recognize mind to be a complete openness. So self-grasping is like a magnet that attracts, pulls towards it dualistic thoughts, all these phenomena, the way we perceive them. We are attached to one thing and have an aversion against a different. We think that everything truly exists. So if you always rest within this open state where there is no delineation between yourself and all phenomena of samsara and nirvana, so then you're resting in the mind that is primordially the Buddha. And then it says, I dedicate all merit to the realization of self-awareness. So it is a prayer really that all sentient beings may become separate from self-grasping. May all sentient beings see their true nature. So when sentient beings cultivate bodhicitta, they will first, through the relative bodhicitta, they will recognize all faults to be within self-grasping, and as a result, they will realize ultimate bodhicitta. And there are many individuals who have realized ultimate bodhicitta. And ultimate bodhicitta means to realize that no real samsara actually exists. And then it says, may I perfectly attain the 3 kayas. So finally realizing that no real samsara exists, one actualizes the 3 kayas within one's own mind. That is, the Dharmakaya is the space-like nature of one's mind. And the Sambhogakaya manifests like a rainbow in various forms, in various manifestations of deities, and pure lands, and so forth. And then Nirmanakaya temporarily manifests for the sake of those sentient beings who are still like blocks of ice, appearing in the form of an afflicted sentient being to benefit them. But recognizing that all phenomena have the nature of the 3 kayas and are therefore pure by nature. So whoever realizes that actually realizes the view of the secret mantra, which in essence is to recognize that all appearances are the deity, all sound is mantra, and all thoughts, all mental arisings are the display of primordial wisdom. And so then recognizing all thoughts or all mental arisings as the play of primordial wisdom, one will naturally then see all appearances as the deity and all sounds as the mantra. And therefore recognize that no real sentient being exists, that beings are just in a temporary ice-like state. But ice is actually water by nature. So if one realizes that, one actualizes the 3 kayas. So may I perfectly attain the 3 kayas. So that is also a point that I encourage you to discuss with one another and with your spiritual masters. There are many spiritual masters that you can discuss that with. But if you just think about these words in this sadhana or in any sadhana, it's very important to really reflect on the meaning of these words. It's not enough to just recite some words, but it's very important to really understand and reflect upon the meaning of these words. So now, my Dharma friends, I will stop the teachings here.
Okay, thank you, Rinpoche. Also, we are start 2 o'clock in the Seattle town. We practice CHENREZIG. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Everybody.
Siba.
Okay, we do some discussion here. Our prayer book, page number 16.